And we are so back. Hello, hi, how are you doing? I hope you are well. I've been okay considering. It has been about a week since my last review, and I've been wearing for about a week as well. The fragrance that you can see in the title. The fragrance in question is no, the decant fell. It is the vintage decant of Arpege from L'Envent. Now, L'Envent's Arpege is a fragrance released in the year 1927. I believe it came out 6 years after Chanel's No.5. In French, I believe No.5 is No.5. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a French speaker in the least. But it is the fragrance that I'm here to talk to you about. If you remember correctly, the previous European fragrance that I've talked about, European as in vintage European, as the previous fragrance that I've reviewed, period, has been Son Pacha's Miel Fleur, has been Hermès' Calèche. Calèche has been a great, very clean, white, aldehydic floral fragrance from the 60s, which I have said, if you remember correctly, has taken immense inspiration from this fragrance, Arpege, from 1927. I have worn it for weeks at this point, and I am here to give you an adequate review of it, I believe. The moment that you spray L'Envent's Arpege, you get this very deep, oily, floral accord that calls back to very dense violets. I'm talking Patu's Joy. I'm talking about fragrances that came out a lot later, like Caron's Fleur du Rocailler, which harkens back to this era of fragrances. It very much feels like a rich floral that has this oiliness and powdery nature that can only be found in fragrances that were made for women in the 1920s and 30s, and in fragrances that deliberately seek out to reference and call back to this era of fragrances. When you smell Arpege, you get this purple, this light purple background that has in it this white aldehydic backbone. That in color, honestly, if I were to say it as a certain like established hue, would be something like a lavender purple. There's no masculine lavender. There's not even a unisex lavender akin to something like Caron, Spuranum de Caron. It's something that is much more voluminous. It is much more frilly, wide, Baroque, as I've been, uh, as I've been calling many of Solon Pasha's more European compositions. It's not subtle in the least. There's no minimalism in Arpege. It takes on a more is more mentality when it comes to building a fragrance, but where the fragrances of the 1980s, akin to Dior's Poison, Crizia's Teatro alla Scala, a little earlier, what with Chanel's Coco, which all tend to take on a more syrupy and jammy aspect of this more structure. Fragrances like Chanel No.5, Arpege, Jean Pathus, Joy, and to a slightly lesser extent, but still somewhat applicable, Hermes, Kalesh. They turn from the 80s and 70s sweet angle towards the aldehydic, creamy and yet cold. There's a cold sensation that is very much apparent in these classical feminine fragrances from, if I were to put a year on it, from before the from before the 1950s. Okay, sorry. Yeah. It is a lot. There's a lot more emphasis on texture. You know, a lot of people that I respect in the community say that Kalesh and Arpege specifically, in differentiation from Chanel's No.5, take on a structure that is more akin to a chypre, rather than the creamier and slightly denser version of this almost same structure that is seen in No.5 in Arpege and Kalesh. There is this chypre-like hairiness, but the white floral undercurrent and even overcurrent take this far away from something like a calandre or a Y for Women from Yves Saint Laurent. It really does place you in the Unkelly Valley between an oriental chypre or a green chypre, like I said, Mitsuko and Calandre and Y for Women, and the almost purely aldehydic floral fragrances like Chanel No.5 and its ilk. I would absolutely name you another aldehydic floral. Oh wait, honestly, and also Jean Padu's Joy, Jean Patu Joy, and Chanel's No.5 are in one category of the opulent, supremely flowery, creamy aldehydic florals, and the Y for women, Calandre, Mitsuko to a much lesser extent in the other end, as green chypres and just classical chypres. In the middle, which this middle is not a narrow line per se. It is more a cloud, a nebulous electron cloud of fragrances that take a lot heavy inspiration from this Arpege L'Envant. Chief among them being this information is from my dear friend online known as Jura Rose. Thank you for that. Hermes's Calèche, and to a lesser extent, Hermes's Equipage. It has the creamy white floral nature of this side of the classical floral variety, like Joy from Jean Patu and Chanel's No.5, and from this side it has the hairy texture and the slightly greener background and coloring of the fragrance that is seen from Mitsuko Eau de Toilette and Calandre and Y pour femme. All of it just coalesces together to make this incredibly feminine and yet incredibly sophisticated and serious, dare I say even a bit snooty fragrance that conjures up this stern woman that does not make you the time of day until you work and shatter away at this wall of coldness, of this you are no more than a stranger, and only then will you discover this dainty, warm, giggly even side of the perfume that is Arpege, and to a lesser extent Calèche from Hermès. As incoherent as that might have been, considering that I have made this perfume review while inebriated, I will say thank you to everyone who has watched this far. And so, for those who have watched this far, I will make a very brief summary of what I've talked about so far. Arpege Parfum is a very classically feminine perfume from the 1920s and 30s that crosses in its structure the characteristics of the oriental chypre, akin to Mitsuko, and the green chypre, akin to something like Y for Women and Calandre, with the aldehydic and dense floral genre of perfumes like Patu's, Joy, and Chanel's No.5 or No.5, as it is better known in English, which No.5 is the perfume that Arpege chiefly took most of its DNA from, thanks. That it took most of its DNA from. And with this combination of the aldehydic floral and the chypre, it has created a beautifully opulent, yet cold and light combination that may find itself in its element on an older woman, and yet a man that finds himself in character more effeminate than the quintessential macho toxic masculinity man. And more so, it finds itself in the man who is more in tune with his emotions and his more feminine side. This man, this man, to make long things short, is me. I absolutely adore Arpege and would drain this sample along with my other sample that has been graciously sent by Anoush. And with that, I would also recommend Arpege to any woman, older or otherwise, any man, older or otherwise, to at least try and sample Arpege Eau de Parfum. If you have enjoyed this video, do make sure to like and comment on what you think of Arpege, if what I've said made any sense to you, and if you do agree or disagree with my take on Arpege. And do also comment what other perfumes does Arpege remind you of. Thank you so much for listening, and I bid you adieu.